Hey y'all, Biohack here. Today we got the announcement of the next fusion, which is this Easter bunny here called Razzlevarg. And I personally think this champion is an SS tier, super good fusion that you absolutely don't want to miss. However, I seem to be a little alone in my enthusiasm, or maybe not alone, but people are a lot more tepid about this champion than I was expecting. I think he's going to be absolutely nuts, and I think if you skip this fusion, unless you're like a super whale dropping like $1,000 a month in the game, you will regret it because this champion has a ton of uses, and I see a lot of potential for this champion. So in this video, we're going to go over his kit, and then I'm going to tell you where, as a fairly endgame player, all of the endgame content I think he could be super helpful with. Okay, so first things first, what does his kit actually do? On the A1, we have a 3 times hitter on a single target, and anytime you see something like a 3-time hitter on your A1, it immediately makes you think Fire Knight. This champion also gets 5% turn meter boost every time he hits, so his A1 is essentially giving him a 15% turn meter boost every time he uses it, which is going to be insane when we combine it with the rest of the kit, which we'll talk about in a second. The next ability he has is an AoE attack, and it also places Leech. Once you book it out, it's on a 3-turn cooldown with a 100% land rate. He also heals himself when he places the Leech, so that's going to be really nice as well. This is probably the least impactful portion of his kit. It's just a nice to have. It's an AoE attack. Leech buff is a good buff in general. And the fact that he's bringing in a little bit of healing for himself is actually kind of nice because he's probably going to be running so fast, he's going to run over your other buffs. So he does need some way to kind of stay alive for really difficult content. But yeah, I think this is a good ability. It's not the kit defining ability that he has, but it's fine. It's good. Okay, next one on the list is a fantastic ability. Actually, it's a really this is a really underrated ability. It's the same one that Claude has, Claude Beastfeeder, and it's partly what makes that champion so good. So what it is an AoE attack. Now that's actually nice. The fact that this is attack, Claude doesn't attack on his, but the fact that this is attack is really nice for things like Fire Knight, where like other speed boosters, I mean like Lydia does it, but a lot of speed boosters don't actually provide an attack when they do the increased speed, so you don't get that extra hit in to help break the Fire Knight's shield. He does. This is an attack, so you will get the speed buff. You also get an increased accuracy buff, which is kind of why I'm comparing him to Claude, and what makes him so nice is as you'll see with the rest of his kit, this increased accuracy buff is going to be able to stay up almost permanently on the rest of your champions, which is going to dramatically reduce the gear requirements for a lot of different content, and just make this champion like super valuable for progression and for endgame stuff. Okay, so then the next thing, and part of the thing, up until this point, he's got like a decent kit. Like this is a good champion at this point in the game. And then we add his passive. Every time he places an increased speed buff, he increases his own speed by 5, and it stacks up to 100. So what that means is if you're in a dungeon or a Hydra battle or whatever, like say you're in a dungeon, you place increased speed on all 5 of your champions. Now he's got 25% more speed. He uses that 4 times, and he's got 100 extra speed. That is absolutely insane. The reason this is so important. Okay, well, so first off, we'll talk about the aura. So then the last thing is just the aura, right? Aura gives increased speed in all battles by 20%. That's great. Nice. Can't complain. It's a speed champion. It's nice to have more speed. Okay, but the reason why this champion is so good and why I think some people are sleeping on him is the fact that he has this passive that lets him move so fast means that unlike other champions like, say, a Lydia, for example, or most speed buffers in the game, they give you a 2-turn duration speed buff on a 3-turn cooldown. This means that if all your champions are running at the same speed, and maybe the speed booster is the last in the turn, your champions at best are only going to have that speed buff up for 2 turns, and then they're going to have 1 turn where they don't have that speed buff in. So you can bring a buff extender, for example, to keep that up 100% of the time. But a normal speed booster champion is going to be missing quite a lot of potential speed that they could be giving to your team because that buff is going to be constantly falling off due to the mismatch between the duration and the cooldown. This champion, because he moves so fast thanks to that extra 100% speed from his passive, or 100 base speed from his passive, and also his AoE or his A1 turn meter boost, it's going to be very, very easy for him to actually lap the rest of your champions on your team, and therefore he will be able to keep that increased speed buff up with 100% duration. Also, he's bringing that increased accuracy buff up. Like, I'm going to talk about one of the ways I want to use this champion. But for example, when I use Claude in Iron Twins, I have to bring in a buff extender to keep that increased accuracy buff up from Claude. Otherwise, it's going to fall off. And then if my Geomancer goes to put HP burn off, but the Claude increased accuracy buff has already fallen off, it won't land, for example. Or, same thing with like my Lord Chamfort for the speed debuff or something like that. The fact that this champion can lap those guys and then keep the buffs running permanently means he essentially can fill that dual role of having the buffs and bringing the initial buffs, but also removing the need for the buff extender. And I think that is going to be super, super, super huge. And that's why it's so important that this champion in particular is getting all that extra speed, is to keep those speed buffs up permanently. And then just in general, like if you build this champion with a decent amount of speed, like say 320, 350 or something like that. I mean, as much as you can get, right? You build this champion to be super, super quick. Then you add in that extra 100 speed from his passive. And this champion's going to be going like 3-to-1 ratio with the Fire Knight Hard 10. Like you get the Fire Knight Hard 10 shield down, you drop a decreased speed on that boss, and then you have this guy running at, 450 speed plus a speed buff. He's going to be literally going like a 3-to-1 ratio, 4-to-1 ratio with the Fire Knight boss. Like he's going to be going so fast, and because he's got that super quick or he's got that 3-hitter on his A1, he's going to be able to just knock the shields down super, super fast. So that's one of the areas I think I'm really excited to use this champion. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about next, is like, where are all the areas in the game that I think this champion could be super, super good? And I've already kind of alluded to them. So I'm going to pull up my account and talk about like what teams I run and where I think this champion will be replacement. So first things first, we have Iron Twins. I can't actually pull it up. Let's see. Is it going to let me show my presets? It might not. Either way. Okay, so what the team I run for Iron Twins is essentially I run Lord Chamfort in the lead for the HP buff and for the decreased speed on his passive, which is super important for this boss. He is not built with enough accuracy to actually land those abilities, like his decreased attack, his decreased speed on the Iron Twins. He's built in such a way that he only lands it if he has an increased accuracy, right? Just because I originally wanted to have him, I wanted him to be also a Hydra tank, which means or a Mischief tank, which means he needs enough resistance to actually do that job in the low levels of Hydra. I'm going to move my camera over. And so what that means is essentially I could not get him to, what did I just do? I couldn't get him with the right stats, enough accuracy and enough resistance to do both of those jobs. So the solution to that was essentially to fill out the rest of the team. We have Geomancer in here. Of course, for Iron Twins, he's just our damage. He actually is built with a lot of accuracy. He's built with like 540, so he can actually land his ability without the need for increased accuracy. But a big portion of how we get this team to work is by bringing in the champion I already mentioned, Claude. If I can find him. Oh, he's in here somewhere. Come on, Claude. Where are you hiding? He's not in the vault, is he? Sometimes I put these guys in the vault if I don't use them a lot. Anyway, what Claude is bringing to the team is increased accuracy. He's bringing shield, and he's bringing increased speed, right? But he brings it again on a 2-turn cooldown or 2-turn duration with a 3-turn cooldown, and so he can't keep it up with 100% consistency, right? It's right here, 2 turns, 3 turn cooldown. He brings some other stuff too, like healing and a shield, and he brings like decreased crit. Not that we care about much about that because he doesn't have any accuracy to land it. Okay, so Perfect replacement. Oh, like, and then I guess the rest of the team is we use Godseeker and Eerie to do the buff extensions to keep that buff up permanently on Lord Chamfort in particular is the major one, and then and having increased speed on everyone is really nice. And then I use Wither, and that's it. And that's how we basically, this team is pretty reliable. I mean, it's got like probably like a 95 or higher % consistency in Iron Twins. It's no big deal. Runs well, but the way I see using this new champion is because he can essentially fill the role of both Claude and Godseeker's buff extension for this team. I can slot him in perfectly and have him run basically to it's fast enough, which will be very easy to do given his passive. He'll run fast enough to lap Champfort and Geomancer and keep 100% increased accuracy and 100% increased speed on those champions. That means I can then drop Godseeker and Eerie from my team and bring in a champion that might be better in that role. Say, for example, Pythion. Pythion would probably be better than Godseeker because he brings the revive and the passive decreased damage, and he brings the cleanse and the block debuffs to help avoid getting hit with like the decrease defense and other things that boss brings. So there's a perfect example of hard Iron Twins, max level, my end game comp as a fairly established player in this game, clearing all the PvE content. I'm going to use him in my Iron Twins team. I think he's going to be great for that role. Super excited there. And then he also brings things like the Leech and other things that help with survivability as well. So, okay, there's one example I want to use him. Another example for endgame content is hard mode Fire Knight 10. Now, this is not actually a team I built. I honestly haven't had any reason to farm Fire Knight for like months at this point since they actually released hard mode dungeons because I didn't want to do the Supreme Alchemy Fusion. I didn't think she was going to make a difference on my account, and I just haven't had any reason to farm Fire Knight up to this point. So I haven't actually built a hard mode Fire Knight 10 team yet, partly because I don't have a Valkyrie and I don't have a Cardiel. So where I think this team or where this champion can come in is filling a critical role in the team that I have been theory crafting for a while. And what that team is essentially a team that runs at a 3-to-1 ratio with the boss once you put a decreased speed debuff on the boss, right? So you put that decreased speed, it drops the boss's turn speed down to like 175, and then I want to run a 3-to-1 ratio with 2 Gories, or a little bit faster than the 3-to-1, but I'll run 2 Gories, I'll run Ruella, I'll run Oella, who was the fusion 2 fusions ago, who brings a ton of stuff. We'll talk about this comp when I actually build it. And then I needed an increased speed champion. Oella brings the buff extension and turn meter boost and healing and decreased speed. So I think she's critical for this comp. And so we will have that turn meter boost here. But anyway, that's the comp I want to run. But the problem with that comp is it's really, really hard to bust the shield down. I get really close, but I basically need to have a speed booster with a 3-turn or a 3-hit A1. And I was legitimately considering building out Apothecary to fill this role. But the problem with Apothecary is he's not bringing that much else to the team. Like, he's not bringing an aura, and I don't have any speed aura on that comp that I'm talking about, and he's not bringing really anything else to the team other than the speeds and the hits, right? I guess he's bringing some healing, so I could put him in a like Miracle Heal, but I probably need him in Phantom Touch. Anyway, moral of the story is I needed something that could be a speed booster that could have a lot of hits on the A1, but also had some other things going for it, like that speed aura. And so this champion is going to be perfect for that role, because again, he's bringing the speed aura, he's bringing the increased speed, and he's going to be running so freaking fast thanks to his passive that he's going to actually be a monster for keeping that Fire Knight shield down. I mean, hopefully I can blow through the shield. I just need to blow through the shield once and then run literally 3-to-1 with those Gories and just boom, 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 and knock the speed, the turn meter down with the freeze. And I think this comp will actually work. Now, at this point, this comp is purely just based on a bunch of modeling I did with the turn meter and like speed tuning and all that kind of stuff. I think it will work. I do think I probably need to pick up some Phantom Touch blessings and things. So I'm not 100% saying this is going to work, but it's definitely something that I want to try, and I'm definitely going to be building out this champion anyway. So that's one area I think we can get Fire Knight style teams in the hard version that worked very similarly to the old one where we used a lure to keep the turn meter down. I think we can still do that, but everybody just has to be ridiculously fast And this champion is going to enable that to be possible. So that's one of the other pieces of endgame content I think this champion could be viable in. But again, at this point, that's just theoretical. The numbers, I think the numbers work in the spreadsheets and the scripts I've been running, but again, I haven't tested it. So if anyone's interested, any content creators that have access to the test server are interested in building that comp, talk to me and we can figure out how to speed tune it exactly, or just build everyone like super fast and let that do its thing. But also other things that he brings, like the increased accuracy, is going to help with that a lot, because it means we don't need enough as much accuracy on the other guys because of that buff, so we can do things like build more speed on them and things like that. So anyway, that's something I think he could be really, really good for, but again, we'll have to figure that out when we get there. Okay, the next thing, I think he's going to be really, really good in Hydra as well. And again, like he's kind of filling a similar role to just like the Necmothar might fill, or any other speed booster. But again, because he can move so fast, he can keep those buffs up permanently, whereas other champions can't. So I'm thinking about what I'm probably going to do is slot him into one of my Hydra teams. And particularly the one that uses a Royal Guard and a Husk, right? I have my Royal Guard and my Husk both built with a significant amount of accuracy, because I want to be able to either provoke the Head of Decay or place decreased speed with the Royal Guard or whatever, right? Like I want to be able to land their abilities that are actually useful in Hydra, but they require a ton of accuracy. And this is kind of a pain because it makes these champions so stat hungry. They need 100% crit rate. They need a ton of crit damage. They need a lot of survivability, and they need a lot of accuracy. All of these things are really hard to get, but by bringing in this fusion champion, we can keep up an increased accuracy buff with 100% consistency on these champions, because he'll be able to lap them thanks to his passive, which means I can dramatically reduce the amount of accuracy I need to actually do this content, and then reallocate those stats in other areas: more crit damage, more survivability, more speed. So I really do think this champion has a ton of utility in absolutely endgame PVE content. I see people pew-pewing that. They're like, oh, I don't know, like he's not that good. Like, I mean, he's fine, but I wouldn't use him anywhere. He's not endgame content. He's like progression champion. Like, I mean, maybe he's progression champion in the sense that like if you literally have every champion in the game, he wouldn't fit into most of your teams. But I mean, like even players who've been playing a long time, content creators, like aren't doing Fire Knight hard 10 because it's that end game, and you literally need Cardiel and Valkyrie are like the only teams that are doing it with any consistency. And if this champion can come in and enable us to do some of that content, it is not fair to say he's not good in end game content, because he absolutely is. I think he's so good in PvE content. PvP content's a little bit of a different story. I don't think he's amazing. I think he's not terrible, because I do think you could build him. Like if I was going to use him in PvP, basically what he would be is an alternative for a speed aura, right? Because he does have that speed aura, and he brings the increased accuracy on an attack and also brings increased speed. So if I was going to use him in PvP, I would probably use him in like a bomb team, for example, where I want him to go and put the increased accuracy up. I'd put him in like a stun set or a provoke set or something like that, a CC set. So he'd go out, he'd throw out the attack, he'd give me increased accuracy, then he'd throw out the attack, and then follow up with like the buff strip and the bombs or whatever. That's the only place I could see maybe using him in for PvP, but he's not like that good for that role. It's possible that he'll actually have decent damage because he is an attack-based champion. He's not a support. He's an attack-based champion, and he gets damage from speed, and you're going to want to build him with a ton of speed. So maybe he'll actually be a decent nuker as well. He doesn't need to be. He literally could do nothing. He could do no damage, and he would be a fantastic champion. So he doesn't need to do damage to be good, but for PvP, that's kind of what you would want. But either way, I don't think this champion's like PvP is not what you should be thinking about for this champion. He's definitely like a PvE champion. That's where he's going to excel. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to get this out there because I really do think that this is one of those fusions that if you don't do, you will regret. And I think people are You know, it's like another ninja situation where people are like, oh yeah, he seems okay, and then it turns out like he's like the best champion ever. You know what I mean? Like, I think people are sleeping on just how strong this champion can be, and I think it's because they're not really thinking about this idea of keeping up the 100% speed and the 100% accuracy. Like, people just see champion brings speed boost, it brings speed boost, and that's the end of the story, and they're not thinking about like the bigger picture of like how much duration does it actually have. Is it going to stay with 100% uptime? This is why champions like Godseeker and Eerie are actually like so good, because there's so many champions in the game that bring those 2-turn duration on 3-2 and cooldown buffs, and buff extenders let those buffs stay up permanently. Well, this champion can do that job for speed and for accuracy without the buff extender, just because of that passive that lets him move so fast. Now, there's some downsides. He's gonna outrun the other buffs on your team, but he does bring like a decent bit of self-healing, right? Like, he has that ability. Like, literally, if we look at his abilities again, like, think about this. 10% of his max HP for each leech buff placed by this skill. Like, he's going to heal himself 40% heal if he drops this on Hydra. Like, that's a huge heal. Like, I mean, I was kind of like saying like, oh, you know, this ability is whatever, but like, no, it's not whatever. Like, yeah, sure, he's going to outrun the rest of his buffs, which is going to make him squishier, but he's going to bring a lot of healing. He also has this 3-hit A1, which, you know, you put him in Giant Slayer, you know, that's a lot of hits that can proc, and then he'll have leech, so he'll be able to heal himself up. So I think some of the downsides people are worried about, like, oh, he's going to overrun his buffs, are not quite as bad as people think. And again, because you're going to be able to run so many turns relative to the enemies that you're fighting, things like the healing from the leech is actually going to be able to get him like very, very full. Like, if you're running at a 3-to-1 ratio with the boss, that means every single time the enemy takes a turn, you're going to be getting at least one of these attacks out, which means you're going to be getting a lot of healing from that. So yeah, so some of the downsides people are worried about, like his running out of the buffs, I think are not as bad as people think, thanks to the other aspects of his kit. And some of the good things he brings to his kit, like his ability to increase the buffs with 100% uptime on the rest of your team, I think people aren't really appreciating as much as they should be. So I think this champion's going to be great. I think you should go for it. And hopefully I'm right, and you know, I can point to this video in a year and be like, yeah, I totally called it, and we'll see what happens. But for me, I'm definitely going to go for this fusion. It might be a little tough because it is not a fragment fusion. It is like a standard fusion, so we're going to have to get the rares and the epics and all that kind of stuff. But I think you definitely should probably try and get this if it's possible for you. And hopefully, you know, this champion is going to turn out to be awesome for all of us, but we'll have to see. And I'll definitely, if I can get him to work in some of those teams I've talked about, I will do another highlight when I actually get access to him. So I'll see you all in the next one. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that yet. I would love, I mean, I'm so far away from this because this raid channel is, you know, still kind of a secondary channel for me. But if I can ever get access to the test server, it would be so awesome to be able to build some of these teams I've been theory crafting and actually show them to you and see if they work, rather than just like running them in simulations and hoping for the best. So yeah, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.